properly introduce.
I'll be right back.
I'll go ahead and wait for Bill to return. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, let's go ahead and get a proper introduction, right, Bill?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I would like to welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. I am Jennifer Bumpus, President of the Monroe School Board. Carlos Ayes, our district's Hispanic liaison, has joined us tonight to assist with Spanish translation. Carlos, will you please let our Spanish-speaking attendees know how they can participate in the meeting in Spanish?
Para recibir la traducción en vivo, por favor llamen al 360-804-4324. 360-804-4324 y con mucho gusto yo.
Gracias, Carlos. Thanks, Carlos. Okay, we acknowledge that racism and discrimination exists in our schools and throughout our community, and it has and continues to negatively impact our students. We know that this needs to change and that any significant systemic changes will take time and require us all to partner together and commit to being an inclusive district and community who no longer tolerates racism or discrimination of any kind. The first step in this important work is to fully understand where we are starting from, and therefore our goal tonight is to simply listen. We want to hear your stories, your experiences, your concerns, and your ideas of what is needed to move forward. To facilitate this listening session, we have invited Bill De La Cruz. Mr. De La Cruz is a national consultant and facilitator working with school boards, schools, and school districts, facilitating conversations about the impacts of race, stereotypes, bias, and judgments in our interactions with each other. He has an extensive mediation background and uses a unique set of skills to build relationships in communities he supports. Mr. De La Cruz will start by introducing the work he does, and then we'll open the floor to hear from you. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand via Zoom, and our wonderful Director of Technology, Mr. Keith Felton, will temporarily move you over one at a time as a panelist so that you may speak. If you do not have good audio or microphone, or don't feel comfortable publicly speaking, you may email Mr. De La Cruz at billdelacruz1@gmail.com. His phone number is 1303-875-0070. Is there a way we can communicate that or something? His the email and phone number afterward, Keith?
Yes, ma'am. Probably the best thing for us to do is we could post that on our website.
Awesome.
Aaron and Tamara can probably handle that when we're done. Probably put that next to the recording would be my recommendation.
Awesome. We'll go ahead and do that then. And here for this listening session, Mr. Bill De La Cruz.
Okay. Thank you. Hi, everybody. I can't see you all, and I know you're out there, about 64 of you. So I'm really excited to be spending a couple of days here in Monroe. I've had some really interesting conversations throughout the day that will continue into tomorrow. And I'm really here over these couple of days to just hear your voices and to understand the stories and the issues and ideas about how we move forward. I want to start though with something that I didn't realize was an issue until I came in and started talking with folks about the last school board meeting. And I do this from a couple of perspectives. I really believe that it's important to walk the talk. And so to me, that means that if there's something that needs to be addressed, whether I intentionally did something or whether the impact was something that I didn't intend, that I have to address it. And intent and impact is a perspective that I bring in to this conversation that has been really helpful for me in my own growth, both personally and professionally. And intent is aspirational in that it hasn't really happened yet. And so intent is about the things that I want to say, or the perspective that I want to share, or the ideas that I want to leave when I meet with a person or a group of people. And impact is factual in it's something that I look at afterwards and say, okay, so what was the impact? And so in talking with a couple of folks before I got here, and in talking with a group of folks today, I realized that something I said that I didn't have the intention of the impact that it had at the board meeting had an impact that I didn't intend. So I want to address that first, because I think it's, as I said, it's important about my own integrity and about modeling what walking the talk actually looks like. And so when I talked about cancel culture and getting rid of people who make missteps, and the idea of how that is prevalent in our society today, some folks took it as defending the superintendent or defending the district. And so what I want to say is that that was not my intention. I am in no way defending the superintendent, the district, or for that matter, anyone in terms of this work, because that is not my role. I don't even take a defensive posture when I make a misstep, because if I make a misstep, I want to learn from it. And so as part of my own process. And so sometimes I have to process in front of 64 people or 100 people and say, this is what happened and this was my intention. So my intention was really to talk about this culture that we all live in that's divisive, that cancels people out, and that in some way marginalizes us for some behaviors that we have that may be blind spots. Now, what people have made me aware of is that I don't know the history of what has transpired before I got here with the superintendent, with your community, or with anybody else. And I don't purport to know that. And so my comments were not in defense of anybody, because as one teacher I talked to told me that when she heard me say that, it made her feel like I was taking away the impact of some of the trauma that she's experienced in being a 20-year educator in the district. And I really empathize with that, because I in no way want to marginalize or discount anybody's experiences, because that's just the opposite of what we're doing, which is really having a conversation to understand and reflect on how racial trauma is not only present, it's generational, and it's something that many, many people have experienced over the course of their lives, in their own personal and professional lives. And so I wanted to lead with that by way of just saying my intent was not to defend or marginalize anyone. And I apologize that that was the impact that some of you may have taken away from those comments. And I realize that's like the elephant in the room in a lot of the spaces I've been in today. So I'd just like to address it up front to let you all know that I don't play any role in what's happening right now. And I am very happy about that, because I know it's a very challenging time for the district, for the board, for the leadership. And I empathize as a former school board member with what they're having to go through, because I could tell you my own stories of working with leaders that we had some really challenging times for. So I wanted to lead with that, because as I said, it's important for me that when I recognize something that I did had an impact that I didn't intend, I just want to address it right away. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my approach to this work. And I'll actually use some of the questions I got from the Monroe Education Association, which we just got off a really great call and a really great conversation. And they asked me a lot of really good questions that made me think. And one of the questions they asked me was, what have been my own experiences, or what has happened in my own life that have caused me to be in this space that I work in? And I said, it started out at a very young age when I was in third grade and kids would call me disparaging names based upon how they looked at my ethnicity and my race. And some of them would ask me if I swam over here. And that third grade was somewhere over 50 years ago. And so for me, the treatment that I got as someone who does not identify as white has been a part of my whole life experience. People challenging my ability to be on the school board because I don't have a college degree at the time, or being so impressed that I could articulate myself because they had a stereotype or a judgment. I remember in my own home having my mom, who was Spanish and married my dad, who was a very abusive Mexican man, telling me all of these disparaging comments about the Mexican side of my ethnicity. And I realized that some of the things that I took into school and into my interactions were rooted in the things that I learned at home, and that third grade kids don't make up these names and stories and questions all by themselves, that they have to hear them from somewhere. And so at a very young age, I had people point out how I was different, and not only how I was different, how I was less than because I was different. And so that was a part of me that really made me recognize how people stereotype and judge just based on how they see you. I have a very relational approach to this work in that I really work hard to connect people through our hearts and not our heads. So really getting to know who we are as human beings versus the stories that we're making up about each other. And that brings me to an experience I'll share with you when I was 13 years old. And my sister died really suddenly from one day to the next from acute bronchial pneumonia. And we grew up in an abusive home, and my dad was an alcoholic and beat up on mostly me and my sister who died. And at 13 years old, I blamed him because when you grow up in an abusive culture, self-care and worth are basically beat out of you. And I remember my brother telling me a story when 2 weeks before she died, that he was driving past a medical clinic and he said, "Hey, Lee, should we go to the doctors? Let's get an antibiotic." And he had been a former Navy medic, so he knew that whatever she had could be cured really easy. And she said, "No, no, no, I'm fine." And so he regrets to this day that he didn't force her to do that. And it taught me a lot about relationships, because what I realized is that I love you and I care about you are not really a part of an abusive home culture. And I don't think I ever told my sister that I loved her. And I realized as a kind of skewed 13-year-old that telling her in a coffin is too late because she's not there. And so it made me realize the importance of relationship. And that if we love and care about each other or someone, that we need to tell them when they're like this, because when they were like my sister was, it was too late. And so all of these experiences in my life, I truly believe is what has driven me to do the work that I do today. And I started doing my own personal work when I was 18 years old, because the trajectory that I was on would not have led me to sit with you today or to even think about doing this work. And so that's the personal side of it. So for me, there's a personal passion that drives me. The professional side of it is I did get my college degree. I got an MBA in negotiation and conflict resolution. I did a lot of work around cross-cultural communications. I was an adjunct teacher for Regis University in Colorado, where I worked with educators, teaching them classes on culturally responsive pedagogy and culturally responsive practices. And having a mediation background, that I've been mediating conflicts since 1985, has helped me to realize that most of the conflicts that we have in our community, and I would say even in our country today, are rooted in a lack of communication. And so I use all of these tools as a way to facilitate dialogue. And I'm really fortunate in that I get to travel around the country. I work with all levels of educators. I work with universities, I work with police departments, I worked with fire departments, doctors, talking about the impacts of biases and stereotypes and judgments in our interactions with each other. And my objective is to normalize this conversation, and not from the perspective of beating each other up or dehumanizing each other, from the perspective of realizing that there's a lot more that connects us than divides us. And if we can get past how we see each other based on the stories that we're making up, we can get to know the authentic person. And the question, the overarching question for my approach is, do our biases, do our judgments, do our stereotypes inhibit or enhance our ability to be in authentic relationship? And authentic relationship is defined as getting to know you for who you are versus the story that I'm making up about you. And doing this outside of judging, blaming, and shaming each other. So the idea for me is we can't continue to beat each other up for our blind spots or for our missteps and think that we are going to stay as an engaged community. We all live in the same divisive country and world. And I think that the only way through this divisiveness is to see how we are all connected. And one of the ways that we're all connected is every living, breathing human being on the planet has biases. And our biases are impacting how we see each other, how we interact with each other. And it's mostly just rooted in increasing our self-awareness and using critical self-reflection as tools to be able to have these dialogues and still remain intact as community, because that's really an important aspect of this approach that I'm sharing with you, is how do we maintain a community? Because ultimately, everything that we do as adults is affecting our children. And when I approach this from the lens of education, I think that we have to hold ourselves to a higher standard, because we are raising the next group of leaders in our communities, in our country, and in the world. And that's a really important responsibility. And so I think that's another driver for me. Another one of my experiences is I spent 10 years as the director of equity and inclusion in Denver Public Schools. And in Denver, we have 92,000 students and about 16,000 employees. About 7,000 of those are teachers. And we did just as much work with our academic side of our organization as we did with the operations. So working with our bus drivers and our food service workers and our paras and our school resource officers, who are now called safety officers, and as much as we did with teachers and administrators, because the approach is really comprehensive in that everyone who interacts with the community and with our students impacts how they experience the district. And so it's really important that we include everyone in these conversations. And I work really hard to be collaborative and to facilitate dialogues that deepen our understanding of each other's stories and the impact of intersectionalities of identity, the roles that plays when we use that as the predicator for how we interact with each other. And again, a question I was asked by the Education Association, well, why did you leave that job if you love the work so much? And I said, well, my wife has been an educator her whole life, and she wanted to become a superintendent, and she got hired to be the superintendent of schools in Lake Oswego, Oregon. And so I told her, when you get a job that you love, I will quit my job and I will support you. And that's why I did it. And then COVID hit, and her district was the first district in the country to have a COVID case. And it just created a whole different environment for us. And we moved back to Denver because her mom, who's 86 years old, her Alzheimer's and dementia was getting worse. And I just went back into private consulting. And for me, this is not just a job, it's my passion. And I have worked with people from ideological perspectives that run the whole gamut of people who are really engaged in this to people who are really resistant. And I've been very successful in connecting with people from all spectrums because I don't approach it from a dehumanization or a denigrating perspective. I believe everyone has value, everyone deserves to be trusted, and everybody has a good heart. And so as I step into this, working with the district and working in the community, I think it's really important to understand that somebody had to hire me and to pay me and to have a contract, and that's the district. It does not mean that I'm beholden to the district or that I'm going to defend one group over the other, because I believe we all play a role in where we are today, and we all play a role in how we move through it. And so for me, I don't know any other way to get through this divisive time that we are all in than to have these conversations, than to really work to create connections with each other and think about how we move together and keep our communities intact at the same time. So President Bumpus, I'll go ahead and stop there. And Keith, if there's anybody who has a question or a comment, would love to entertain that.
Okay, Bill, hang on just a second. Our first hand up is Melanie. So let me promote Melanie here real quick.
Okay.
While we're waiting for Melanie to join us, I just want to reassure people that there are a lot of people who want to share with Bill and want to have a conversation with him. We're going to make sure that his phone number and his email are available. So if you don't get a chance to speak tonight, you will have a chance to share with him.
Hi, Melanie. We can see you now.
Hello. With all due respect, we are 23 minutes into what was supposed to be scheduled as an hour session. And this is now the first we've been able to have it open to the community. So I guess my question is, what is the purpose of this listening session? Because so far it hasn't been listening, at least to the community. And then what are the results of the listening session going to be used for?
So I'm going to listen. So that's the first piece. And I apologize if it's gone a little longer than you thought. I'll take ownership for that. And what I intend to do with this is to put all of my findings together and to share them with the board and the superintendent's leadership team, and then talk about how we disseminate the information to the community in terms of looking at next steps.
And then can I ask one more question?
Mm-hmm.
Is that all right? Well, actually, it's kind of a two-part question, I suppose. How do you plan to balance community with accountability? And then what do you see, or how do you see the district becoming anti-racist?
So what do you mean by balancing community with accountability?
That's a good question. I'll think about that in terms of what I mean by that. But what do you see in terms of how do you see the district becoming anti-racist? Because you've done a lot of work with this. I know you've been in the Everett School District for 2 years now, so you've done work in this. So kind of what does that look like to you?
It looks like being able to have conversations about the impacts that race has in our interactions, in how we provide opportunity and access and inclusion to curriculum, to instruction. So that's partly the student side. It talks about how we are attracting diverse staff members to the district and how we are keeping them and providing leadership and development for them. And it's really asking that question of the community to say, what does an anti-racist school district look like for everyone who's on this call, for the folks that I have talked with today? I'm starting to get some understanding, but a lot of people have different ideas about what that means. So some of it is really facilitating the dialogue to get people to start to identify what does that mean to you, because it's different in every community that I work with.
And to expand on that question before, one of the comments that you made was that everybody deserves to be trusted. So that's kind of where I was looking at the accountability thing too. It's just like, how do you balance that with holding somebody accountable if they've done wrong or they've hurt people or however that looks?
The way that I do it is I use an inquiry-based approach where I ask them, what was your intention and what was your impact and how do you balance the two? I give them an opportunity to recognize whether it was something that they did consciously or whether it was a blind spot that they were unaware of. I use a lot of the same lessons that I learned to grow, and I had a lot of blind spots and I made a lot of missteps. And if we're really doing this work effectively, that's going to happen in this community as well. And so we have to figure out how to have respectful and compassionate accountability so that we don't beat each other up when we have a misstep. We understand what the impact was and are willing to have that conversation.
Thank you. I'll let somebody else
Thank you.
talk now. Thank you very
Okay,
much.
thanks, Melanie.
Okay, I'm going to promote Heather now, Bill.
Okay, thanks, Keith.
Yeah.
Hi, Heather, we can see you.
Okay, super. I guess I'm the Heather that has been promoted. My name's Heather Young, and I have done a lot of work around diversity, equity, and inclusion myself. I was a founding member of Google's Global Council for that, and am a disabled veteran and the parent of 2 children with disabilities in the community. So I have to tell you that you're not off to a very promising start, in my opinion. I'm very frustrated with you already. And the reason for that is that when you joined the board meeting, after hearing from the community for extended periods of time, outlining the efforts to work collaboratively for multiple years and to collaborate in good faith with the district, with the administration, and with the board, your first comments back to the community were that we should not be jumping to conclusions and that that we should all be working on a collaborative approach and that we were going about things the wrong way. I think that it is going to be really important as you meet with members of the community who have been harmed by the actions and the inactions of the district over the last several years, to start with an understanding that no one who is frustrated at this point, not one single person, started just now. This has been something that many, many, many members of the community have been trying desperately to work collaboratively with the teachers, with the principals, with the head of special education, with the head of security, with the superintendent, and with the board. If you go back and listen to the minutes or the transcripts or the recordings of the past year, just a year of school board meetings and conversations, I think that you will find that this is an issue that has crescendoed because it has been not only ignored, but there has been bad faith. There has been actions of bad faith. There have been comments of bad faith that have happened. And so for you to come into the situation at this point, do the Jedi mind trick, wave your hand and say, we should all start from a place where we're assuming positive intent and that maybe they just have some blind spots. It's not landing well. I appreciate that we do need to work together in order to get through this, but you're going to have to understand that there's some scarring that has happened and that those scars have been earned.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I realize that there is a history here, and I'm getting to know about it more and more. And I appreciate you reiterating that for me and having me realize that that I didn't know all of the history. And I understand trauma and scarring and how that can continue to get built based upon a lack of inaction or a lack of people not following through. And so I will keep that forefront in my mind as we move forward in this work. So thank you very much for sharing that with me.
The last piece is certainly I'll be setting up time with you individually, but as you work through this, I want to make sure that you are keeping at the forefront of your mind that what we are going to have to address as a district is multidimensional. There are intersectional issues, as you've talked about. The problems that have bubbled to the surface most recently and certainly most egregiously have been race related, but for more than a year, what has been raised to the board level are concerns about racism, about homophobia, and also about harassment and intimidation of students with disabilities. So we really have to address all of these things together, because ultimately, if we don't, we're going to end up playing whack-a-mole and not get through to what we need to get through, which is an inclusive district where everyone can thrive.
Yeah, and I appreciate that as well. The students with disabilities is often a group that's not talked about or brought into this conversation, and it was addressed multiple times today. And it is systemic, and all of these pieces have to be addressed: racism, homophobia, anti-Semitism, treatment towards students with disabilities. And so it's a very nuanced conversation. Race is a factor, it's just not the only factor. So my hope is that as we move forward together, that we can start to have these conversations and realize that systemically that a lot of things have to change.
Super. I look forward to talking further. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to promote Esmeralda now. Uh-oh, we may have lost Esmeralda. I'm sorry, folks. For some reason, Esmeralda dropped. I don't know if that was. So if Esmeralda comes back, I'll promote her in next after we hear from Janelle. Okay, so hopefully Janelle can hear me, and here you come, Janelle. You're up next.
All right.
There
Can
you are.
everyone
Janelle,
hear
can you hear
me?
us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
we can hear
You're
you.
good. You're all set.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to come on and I just wanted to reiterate that while we do know that we're dealing with a lot of issues about racism, a lot of issues about students not feeling, that like they belong, I want to once again bring it back to the students, right? I'm a mother of 7 here in the district. And while this is wonderful that Mr. De La Cruz is here and we're going to start addressing this, I just want to make sure that my students feel safe at school. Whatever that looks like to you, Mr. De La Cruz, as a mom, that's all my concern is. This is a very, this is an issue that has been going on for quite some time. I've only lived here since 2018. I'm from California. And since I've lived here, my children have experienced racial issues at school at every level, elementary, middle, high. And I just think like it's like Heather was saying, there are a lot of scars. But at the end of the day, we need to keep the students in mind. I feel like, as you know, you mentioned, how are we going to recruit like staff, like a diverse staff? Well, personally, I wouldn't want to work for a district that is known for racism. So it's going to be really difficult to recruit those people, you know, that are diverse. It's going to be hard to recruit them when you're known for something. So the entire culture, and I don't mean Black, white, Hispanic, I mean the inclusive culture of the Monroe School District, that is something that I hope through your work that can be addressed. Because if the foundation isn't strong, you can't build anything off of that. So I mean, it's been a rough couple months, you know, and couple years, and so I just feel at this point it's just, we need to see, we need to hear, and, you know, we just need to make this inclusive school district that we all want so badly. You know, I mean, so that's pretty much all I have to say.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. And what I'll say about student safety is that it's not for me to identify that. What part of this conversation is, from your perspective and others, what does it mean to have your students feel a sense of safety or a sense of inclusion or a sense of belonging? Because the culture that, as you emphasize, needs to be created is one where all students feel that sense. And so that would be part of the conversation, is to really understand what that means, and for us to do this so that the district leadership and folks who are in leadership positions all understand what that means. And again, it goes back to what we've already talked about, is this is really a systemic approach. It's not about just tweaking one thing or changing one thing. It's really about looking at the whole systemic structure and culture, and engaging the folks that you're talking about who really want to have this. And I realize that there's been a lot of distance between the district and the community, more and more, including in our conversation this evening. And so that will also be a part of this. How do we bring that together, knowing that there's a lot of scarring and a lot of trauma that's a part of it. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm hoping I say this correctly. Please forgive me if I mispronounce your name. I believe it's Chiquana. Let me promote Chiquana here. There we go.
Hello, you said it correctly.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shaquana. I have a son that goes to Park Place Middle School. He is in the 8th grade. My husband is also one of the football coaches at Monroe, and his name is Myron. We just wanted to, he's currently coaching right now, but I just wanted to speak. I've been a little bit quiet recently. I more so listen, but I did want to just address that, you know, even though there's issues at the high school, like Janelle said, we do have a lot of issues at the middle school and the elementaries as well. You know, my son does come home and tell me a lot of the things that happen at school, even with students using the N-word, people he thinks that's his friends. You know, we have to have those conversations. And you just get to a point to where you're tired. And I really hope that Mr. De La Cruz and the school district, the school board, will really take these issues serious, and so that we can see change. One of the things that I always think about is change in regards to curriculum. Mr. De La Cruz, do you think that there might be any change where there will be books focused on Black history or, you know, Hispanic heritage and things like that? There's a lot of books that I can think of, like, for example, I was sitting here, The Best of Enemies The Hate You Give, different books that I think can be incorporated in our curriculum to make our students understand that there's, different people, different sides, people come from different places. Just wanted to kind of touch base on you and see if that has been a conversation. It might have already been addressed, but those are things that I think that would really help our students. And, for example, my son has to do like book reports, and I feel bad saying this, but then I don't. I always make him pick a book that is based on a Black child or a Black situation to speak and share with the class, because those things are not addressed at school. I follow his curriculum and I ask, what are you guys learning about? What are you learning in history? And the Black history piece for our students, there's no representation for that. And so I feel like I have to do a lot of that at home. I came from Los Angeles, California. We were taught a ton of Black history there. And so when I moved to Monroe, maybe 6 years ago, there was, none of that happening. So I think that our students in the community can definitely benefit from that, as well as, the discussions and things like that.
Yeah, thanks. That's a lot. So I'll tell you first, I am going to spend a couple hours tomorrow morning at Park Place. So I will be there talking with the administrators and some staff, and I'll even see if I can talk to some students about their experiences as well. So we are aware that this is not just a high school issue, and that there are things that we really do need to talk about. I think in terms of the curriculum, it has not yet been a conversation, but I think it gets to the whole idea of culturally responsive pedagogy and culturally responsive practices, which the essence of it is making sure that the students in the classroom are seeing through the content that we're delivering. So to your point, books that are reflective of Black authors, because it doesn't just benefit your children, it benefits all children, because it expands a white student's lens to move beyond just the stereotypes that they are seeing about people from different identities. And so that will be a part of the conversation. And I think it will be really important to engage with the community to talk about resources, because I don't have all of the answers. And I know that a person like yourself with your family, that you probably have a number of books that you could recommend to the district. And so that's where that collaboration will really come into play, where the only way we close the divide between what I've been hearing between the district and the community is we have to start coming together to have these conversations and bring the community in as problem solvers versus just assessing the decisions that the district has made, which are two different approaches to community engagement. So we'll have to talk about too the levels of community engagement and how effective are they in terms of getting people's voices into the dialogue. So yeah, thank you so much. I mean, any one of these topics that your folks have brought up even previous to, we could spend all day talking about. So I appreciate you bringing that in, and know that it will be one of the topics that we'll get to in terms of the whole idea of culturally responsive pedagogy and practices.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, looks like we have Mila up next. Mila, can you hear us?
This is her husband, Carl. Can you hear me?
Oh, we
Yes.
can now, Carl. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you guys for your time. What I would like to add to the conversation, it's my personal opinion. I don't know if this is the correct form for this, but it's my personal opinion that if this is serious, there would be direct action taken. So, because just conversation isn't going to change this. And I want to share with you a letter that I wrote, and it's brief. I'm not going to read the whole thing. So I titled this paragraph, "The N-Word and Why Others Shouldn't Say It." And so Per the dictionary and a commonly accepted understanding, it is the most offensive word in the English language. It is the most offensive word to convey hatred for an African-American individual or the group. When one African-American uses it toward another, it is powerless, regardless of the spelling. In other words, it's the same as one white person using words, body language, and an Academy Award-winning acting performance to express hatred for another white person. So if one white person told another white person, "Oh, I just hate white people," I mean, and you gave your best acting performance, I'm quite sure what you would receive is a look of puzzlement, because they would look at you and say, "You're white." One more example to that, it would be the equivalent of my brother saying some very nasty and mean things about my mother. I would be mad at him, but it wouldn't carry the same weight, because I know as he talks about my mother, he's also talking about his mother. And then I finished my paragraph by asking a question. And that question is, what good-hearted person would want to do something that vile? So I don't understand. So my personal preference is, I don't care for the word, regardless of who uses it. But I realize when another Black person, like I said once before, when another Black African-American uses that word toward me, I'm African-American, it doesn't carry the same weight, because whatever he's saying, he's also saying it about himself. So, and then I want to jump to another part of my letter here really quick here. So I said also, I wrote this letter to the principal, and I told him, I said, I believe you and your staff can't tell the students what to believe, but you can and should set rules and guidelines of expected behavior and clearly defined rules and consequences of unacceptable behavior. So I just wanted to add that. And once again, I just want to say thank you for your time.
It was Carl, right? Not Milo.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you
Yeah, it
for
was
that.
Carl.
I appreciate it. And I'll just tell you my own story. When I was 12 and my sister was still alive, and she had a Black friend, and we were all hanging out, and I used the N-word, and I was just a little guy at the time, but I felt this like big stare at me, and he explained it to me much in the way that you did about the power of the word and what it meant. And I had no idea. I was only like 12 years old. And I never used that word again, because I realized the impact that it had. And so I think that I agree with you in the power of that word and the way that it's used in different racial conversations. And I had a conversation today with the Monroe administrative team just about what you said, is we have to define what is acceptable and unacceptable behavior, and then create accountability for what happens, not only at the high school, but at the elementary school, at the middle school, at the district offices, in terms of how we hold each other accountable in a way that doesn't dehumanize. Because I think that was my greatest lesson when I used that word when I was 12, is he could have very easily just dehumanized me, but instead he taught me a lesson, and it's stuck with me all these years. So
That's great.
So I appreciate you bringing that in. And I think for me, that's the approach. I'm building on a lot of the ways that I learned some of these things. And I was really fortunate to have him educate me much like the way you did just now. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Okay, next we have, I think it's Lene. Here we go. Lene, can you hear us? If you can, you are still muted. There you go.
Can you hear me?
We can now. Thank you.
Great. I've been trying since you called my name. Okay. My biggest concern is that when I saw the Monroe Equity Council and Monroe School Facebook, I saw that they had a hate map. I wasn't able to click into the link, but just seeing a hate map posted online by the Equity Council and hearing from parents that they started making a list of youth incidents and hate incidents in the city is concerning. If I see a teenager writing out a hate list when I was teaching, it was a red flag. Hearing that parents are now have a hate map and are creating a hate list is concerning. It's more than concerning, it's scary to see that our adults in Monroe are starting to create a list. This is not acceptable, and it shouldn't have been posted on the Monroe School Board, let alone an equity council of these people that they see as targets. I think it needs to be addressed for our city and our school board, because a hate map, it's just not right. We should not have it. So do you have any comments on it?
Well, I haven't seen it. And if there's a link that you can share with us that we could see that, I would appreciate that. And I don't know the motivation of, I don't know where you saw it on the district website, so I haven't had a chance to talk with folks or with the Monroe Equity Committee. But I think it warrants a conversation about the purpose of it and the intention of it, if that's the case, and what the long-term reason is for those things. I myself personally think that we need to move away from targeting each other, if you feel like that is what's happening, and really talk about what is it that is happening in the community, what is the culture like, and what's the purpose of what you described in terms of people's motivations. And so without knowing that, I can just speak like I am in general, more broad terms. And so that's what I would say.
The Monroe hate map was the hate map was posted on the Monroe Equity Council
Okay.
and on the Monroe School Board Facebook. So on both of their community Facebook links, it's posted. I couldn't get the link to work, so I don't know what's in it. But when I heard from other parents and they mentioned it was a list of incidents between students, not committed crimes, just students within the school district, which is why as a teacher, I'm like, that's not right. Because a list of students that on a list of a negative list has negative impacts on our community.
And it had students' names?
I'm not sure. I didn't see either one. I'm just hearing about it from parents now in the community, and I saw it on I saw that they had a hate map on Facebook. I just couldn't get the link to work.
Okay. Well, I think it's something we can look into and maybe have a deeper conversation about it. Great.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
A second concern I have is the double standard on the N word. So I noticed at the parks and the YMCA's and the kids through the high school, it's that the N word is being used from Black Americans, but then if it's getting used in the other one, we all know that's the wrong word to use. But I think the double standard is very confusing in our community. When I worked as a coach in Shoreline at the YMCA, I had students that were using the N word on the basketball court sit down because I thought it was inappropriate, but the parents of those kids felt that it was racist of me to have the kids sit down. And I'm noticing a similar trend in Monroe. So when I go into the YMCA and I notice the Black students using the N word, I think we should have a standard that says that this word, whether they use ER at the end or A at the end, it shouldn't be allowed. And I think it needs to be explained why it shouldn't be used, instead of having the double standard where it's okay for them to use it and there's no reprimand, but if anybody else uses it, it's to the point that they're expelled. So any comment on that one?
I think it's just indicative of the depth and nuances of these conversations that we are going to dive into as a community to really, I think it goes back to what Carl said, is that when kids are in school, when adults are in school, what are the acceptable and unacceptable behaviors that we want? And then as a community, that's a different conversation because the community is going to have to decide what that looks like outside of a school environment. So I think, Linnea, it just goes to the depth and the nuances and challenging of all this work as we move forward. And I think that we'll commit to continue to have the dialogue with each other.
What is the Monroe Schools Board's feelings on the double standard? Are you accepting that Black students call other Black students the N-word and feel it's just a slight, hey, don't use that word in the classroom? Or do you want teachers that come in like a substitute say, hey, this isn't appropriate, you need to go to the office?
So I'll just say this, and then President Bumpus, you can go wherever you want. The purpose of our time this evening was just to kind of listen and get an idea of what is important to the community. And I know that President Bumpus will probably take this back to her colleagues and have a conversation or look into the Facebook. So I don't really want to get into that, like, let's answer the question, because it's really an opportunity to just kind of hear what people's thoughts are. And I'll defer to you, President Bumpus, if you want to add anything.
I would. Thanks, Bill. Hi, Lene. So I would like to say one, so I went looking just to confirm, but the school board doesn't actually have a Facebook page. We do have a Monroe School District Facebook page, and all communication through that goes through our communications team. And so I'm not sure if maybe there's another Facebook page.
The Monroe School District has 2 Facebook sites and a Monroe School Board Facebook.
I know that there are other groups, and they report on some of the stuff that we do at the district level and or at our school board meetings. But I confirmed with our our director of communication that we have the One Monroe School District Facebook page, but I still am interested in seeing what the hate map, or if there's a link to that. I would love an email of that or some communication. And in regards to the N-word being communicated, that's something we have all 5 board directors. So I'm on the screen, but we have 4 other board directors actually tuning into this conversation. And so they're able to hear what's going on. I think that we have Bill here and we have his expertise and his knowledge and experience. And so he's kind of just gaining information and, and understanding what our needs are in our community. So that's what it is we're here to do right now, is to gauge, understand, to listen. And then if we do decide to move forward with more tangible stuff or how we progress from here, then that's something that will be up to the board as well and up to our district office.
Well, with the N-word, I think a double standard is not, might be equity, but it's not equal rights. I mean, I think it's inappropriate and it causes confusion, especially in the younger kids. So if the school board addresses it, I think it should be a standard. No one says the N-word. My opinion as a community member and as an educator. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you calling on me. Have a great day.
So I know it's 7 o'clock, but we have 4 people that have their hand raised. And I'm wondering, Bill, if you would mind allowing those 4 people, we'll stop there. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, let's go an extra 15 minutes. So that means
Okay.
I only really talked for 8 minutes. And the majority of the time was for the community. So please.
So just so everybody knows, we've got Nora, Esmeralda, Melanie Ryan, and Mila.
Yep. And then I'll take a little break, and then I have one more Zoom meeting after this.
Okay, Bill, per what I said earlier, I'm going to promote Esmeralda first, just because she was on, and I think she dropped off.
Perfect.
Maybe had a connection issue, so I'm going to promote Esmeralda first. So hang on just a second.
Thanks, Keith.
You betcha. Okay. Oh, no. Oh, here we
Oh.
go.
Oh,
Esmeralda,
there.
can you hear us okay? You're muted right now, Esmeralda.
Sorry, I was having connection problems. Can everyone hear me right now?
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am, we can.
Okay, great. So yeah, my name's Esmeralda. I work for the Frank Wagner Elementary as a paraeducator. I also have 2 kids at Park Place Middle School. And I wanted to address about the EL program we currently have, since I feel that the kids need to be included in electives. And I feel that not having it, to be able to have electives, they're not being included in all the school activities. And also, once they get to the high school, I feel like they're not being included for college, like snow aisle or running start. And I feel like they're not being communicated of these opportunities because they believe that these kids are not going to be able to do it or not capable because they're coming from a bilingual family. Or when I went to high school, I had the experience that they told me that my parents didn't have a career, so I wasn't going to be able to do running start, that I wasn't capable of doing that. So I just want to make sure that all kids are being inclusive, and that's just my concern right now.
Well, thank you for that. I've heard a lot about the EL programs, and I am getting myself up to speed with understanding some of the barriers and conversations we need to have. So I think that that will be a part of our dialogue as we move the work forward. So thank you for reaffirming some of what I've already heard, and know that these will all be a part of our work as we move forward.
Yes, thank you. I just want to make sure that everyone has equal access to all the opportunities out there. And I know that there's kids out there that are like more than capable of doing snow aisle, running start, and not dropping out because they get all the core classes at the end of the semester. I have heard that since they're not able to find out how to choose their classes right when they start like 9th grade or 10th grade, they get jammed with their core classes and they get so frustrated that they want to drop out. And we don't want anyone be dropping out because they're all stressed out about all these hard classes because they're not getting electives or a balanced schedule.
Great, great. Thank you for sharing that. I know that the district folks who are on here are listening to all of that. So we will follow up.
Great. Thank you for your time.
Good. Have a good day. Good evening.
You too.
Okay. I'm going to attempt to promote Nora at this time.
Hi there. Can you hear me
Hi.
okay?
We can hear you.
Excellent. Thank you for your time, Bill. We appreciate you having this listening session with us. I have a child in Everett School District. I also have a child here in Monroe. My child in Everett had to deal with attire issues because apparently girls can't wear things that will attract boy attention. And she was sent home quite a few times when that happened. So I appreciate the fact that you were in Everett and that you're now here in Monroe. I'm hoping to see some real action from coming out of this, because I have to say, with my child still in Everett at high school level, there's still issues there. And I know you understand because there was the walkout about that problem with our kids and the sexual issues going on there in our high school. And so I would like to see some real action and accountability coming out of this, not just warm hugs. I'm pretty fed up with the warm hugs. I've heard a lot of words. I haven't seen a lot of action coming out of our folks here in Monroe. So I am hoping this is going to be a change. I want to see action. I want to see bold action. I want to see people not be afraid to take a stand. I feel that there's been a contingent of parents and other people in the community that have tried to keep things at a low level, thrown some words at it, minimized it, conflated it to other things, made it political and all of that stuff, instead of actually taking action. So my hope is this will not be just another love fest, that we will actually have something that takes place out of this. And that means things like real tools and real rules for folks to use at the school level when things happen. Because too many times when we hear of a bullying situation or a racist situation, no one knows what to do. No one reports it correctly. It never gets up to the right person. It's the total disconnect between the school district level and the staff down at the school. Everyone knows the story at the school. Why does no one know it at the district level? Why does no one know it at the board level? Why are they hearing it for the first time when the parent comes on and talks about it during public session? That's not good. We need the tools. We need it concrete. We need to have this taken care of, and we need to ignore those people that are going to try to conflate this. They're going to try to, and they will even bully you. I even heard from Superintendent Blasco himself that he got a call about, after a conversation that we had about bullying, that he got a call from a parent that was pretty mad that he was only going to listen to him if he was an N-word. What? Yeah, those people are here in this district. You need to know that, because it's not just people that are blind spotted. There are real racists in this district, and they really do have that ear to their children. So please be aware about that. This is a pretty harsh environment. I think it was made worse because of the whole stay at home, because they had all that influence of their parents on them. And then they don't remember how to be kind to each other coming back. And that's been a problem too. But please be aware of that. This is our environment. We know this environment. We've been here for a long time. We know that there's other places that they, if you're going to don't put your kid in Monroe. Move your kid to North Shore. Move your kid to Lake Washington. Don't move them into Monroe. It's a real serious issue. So I really want you to take this very seriously. I want our board to take it this is a new board. So happy we have a new board, because really we were getting nothing done and people were running out of this district. We were losing headcount. You can look at the metrics. People were running out of this district. Anywhere that they could opt out to somewhere else, they did. So I really want you to take that seriously, because we've sat here for quite a while trying to make things changing, and it wasn't happening. So this is where we're at now. We've made the news. We've made the news too many times for the wrong reasons. And now it's serious. We don't want to be that person anymore. We don't want to be that school district anymore. We don't be the one on the news saying, oh, there they are again. What's wrong with those people? Why can't they take care of the bullying and the racism? We need professionalism in our school district. I have to take a code of conduct every year at school, at work, right? Every year I have to read it. I have to understand it. I have to take a test. Do I understand code of conduct? Do I understand how to address myself in a professional manner in a public space? And I think that is something that we can do in our school district, right? We don't have to deal with this crazy base actions going on with our kids. We don't have to tolerate that. We shouldn't have to tolerate that. And those parents that are out there that are saying, oh, it's fine, you should just build a thick skin. We've heard that. You can see the Facebook page stuff on that. And no, it's not Monroe School's Facebook page. That was where Lene was wrong. That is actually the Families of Monroe Schools. And that is where we talk about these situations. And it gets heated sometimes because people don't really like to hear about inclusion. They don't like to hear about having to be nice to each other. They want you just to suck it up, deal with the bullying, and just have a thick skin. So I really want you to be very aware of this environment. This is not like other ones. This is Monroe, so, take some time and look at our history. Take some time and look at our community and some issues that we've had around Black Lives Matters protest marches and how there was responded about, people partying with their guns and, oh, we're going to protect the businesses. You have to be aware of what this environment is because it's kind of a hotbed and it's known. And so it's going to have to take a lot more than just words. We're at the point where we need concrete results. We need things to actually change. And that means, metrics tied to performance, like our superintendent. We need metrics on that. I mean, you saw the survey, you see where he is now. We need real change there. We need accountability. We need more communication with our board because clearly some of that stuff that was brought up was never mentioned to our board folks. We need that communication back and forth because they need to know about that. And we have a zero tolerance policy in these schools, yet no one seems to know what that means. It doesn't happen. Zero tolerance means nothing right now. And too many times you're going to hear that from parents and from kids that I just don't even say anything anymore because nothing happens. So this is where we are at. We're not like, oh, we just need some, additional hand holding and let's deal with some certain issues. We're pretty low. Our standard is way low right now as far as where we're at as a school district. So we want to bring it up. We all want this change. We want to act boldly. We want to do it now. We want to make it safe for our children. Even if our community is not safe, we want our school system to be safe. We want our schools to be safe. We want to see good, strong action. We want to see education. We want to say that our school staff know what to do in a certain situation if it arises. And right now, it seems like they don't. They don't. I mean, even take, for instance, that issue with the graffiti, over at Skyview, when that was just washed away with racist graffiti, washed away, but never reported up. No one knew about it. Just that school knew about it. And then it was brought up on a board meeting. First time our superintendent even knew about it. So that's not okay. I mean, we need to have that reporting, right? We need to have all this is
Nora, we lost your audio for some reason. I don't know if you can hear me or not, but we have lost you for some reason. You cut right out. Can you?
Yeah, sorry, it happens soon.
Okay. Just wanted you to make sure we didn't cut you.
So
Yeah,
Nora,
no, I just want to
I have a couple other speakers that.
Yeah, and I'm done. Those were my points, but
Okay.
I want to, and I will follow up with you, Bill, because
Okay.
I want to make sure that this is very clear. We're at a pretty low level right now. We need basic information. Don't think of us as, oh, well, we're just kind of sliding on something. No, that's not where we're at.
Okay, well, I appreciate that, and I'm encouraged by the number of people who really do want to do the work and take bold action. So,
Oh, there are, but there's a
Yeah.
whole other contingent that doesn't want us to take bold action, and
Mhm.
they're going to fight you on this. So I want you to know that too.
Okay,
And don't be scared of them. Don't be scared of the bullies, but they're out there.
all right. Well, thank you for sharing all of that. I appreciate it.
Mhm.
Have a good night.
You too.
Thank you.
Okay, we now have Melanie. You're muted, Melanie.
There we go. Hi,
We can hear you
Bill.
now. You're all good.
Okay. We're going to be talking shortly, so I'm going to make this really short, but I did want to address the comment that was made about the Equity Council posting a hate map. We have never posted a hate map. If someone has posted in our comments on one of our posts and we missed that, anyone is free to either direct message us on Facebook so we can take a look at it and let us know where that is, or they can email us at mec@monroeequitycouncil.org. But I just want to make it clear to this community, we have never published a hate map. So
Great, thank you. And we'll
so
see
I
you in a
wanted
little
to
bit.
say, and to let people, let us know if it's somewhere in the comments and we missed. Thanks.
And it looks like our last speaker for the evening is Mila. Okay, Mila, you should be able to speak as soon as you unmute your microphone.
You ready?
Hello, hi, can you guys hear me?
We can.
Okay, really quick, I just want to shed a little light on the N-word and the confusion, I guess the speaker had talked about. I would just encourage her to do a little research on something called Stockholm Syndrome. And that would kind of shed a little light on, because if you really give it some thought, and if you can if a person can metaphorically step outside of themselves and ask the question, well, why would African Americans refer to themselves by such an ugly, vile, nasty word? And researching the phrase Stockholm Syndrome will help understand that. What I do share with her is I would be accepting if the school or the school board said, hey, you know, these are some bad words and you're not going to use words to describe the LGBTQ plus community. You're not going to use bad words to describe people with disabilities. I would be in agreement with that. But like I said, I'll just add one last thing really quick. If I don't know what her particular race is, but it is literally the equivalent of a very good Academy Award winning actor or actress trying to convince another white person how much you hate white people. They will look at you like you're crazy. But like I said, I don't see it as a double standard, but you know, I understand the challenge that Ms. Bumpus and the school board face, because you guys are in a unique situation. You can't legislate morality. We can't tell people what they can and can't do in their homes. But where you guys do have authority is to set guidelines of this is unacceptable behavior in the school. And in the school, this is not going to be allowed. And if you do that, here's the course of action. The first is going to be this. And second, we're going to do that, and so forth and so on. But that's Ms. Bumpus and the school board and the principal of the school. That's their decision to make. But anyway, I just want to share that. I don't want to get long-winded, don't want to talk too long. And once again, thank you guys for the meeting.
Thanks, Carl. Well, I want to, before I turn it back over to President Bumpus, just want to thank you all for your feedback, for your insight. And like I said, one thing I have learned is there's a lot of people in the community who want to have these conversations and take action. And so I'm looking forward to our next steps and to debriefing with the board and with the administrative leadership team at the district to start to formulate a plan of action moving forward. So I'll turn it back over to you.
I just want to sincerely thank everyone who joined us tonight and for sharing your experiences, for your questions, for your ideas. I think it's going to take everyone, right? All the stakeholders involved to create change. And I'm just really encouraged, and I remain hopeful because we had so many people from our community show up today and be vulnerable and be honest and be transparent. And you know, I'm very happy to sit here and meet you there in that space. And so thank you all for showing up. Mr. Dela Cruz still has a whole nother day of meetings and questions and all that good stuff. So we're so excited to have him here. And again, thank you so much for sharing and for your collaboration in all of this. Thank you guys. Have a great night.
Thanks, everybody.